Hi, welcome to today's Master PAL session. Today we are going to be doing what we're considering Module 5, but Module 4 in the actual series that was developed by the wonderful Tabitha Jones-Wohleber. And the title of our module today is Accept Multiple Modalities, and we'll be diving into this topic. Hello, I am Jeanna Antrim. I am a Basque AAC facilitator and SLP.
Hi, and I'm Maggie Judson. I am an SLP and AAC facilitator with Basque as well.
All right, so the whole reason that we're going over this Master PAL series is because we are learning and developing our skills to becoming supporting exemplar AAC communication partners for our students who use AAC.
All right, so as we're going through each module in the Master PAL series, something to keep in mind is we're going to be talking a lot about AAC, but the communication partner skills that we're like delving into and we're practicing and we're working to apply to our practice can be applied when we're working with any student with language or communication needs. So while we're talking a lot about AAC, just remember that this is great for all of our students.
All right, and here's the whole series and our preview again. We've went over a couple of the topics, but today we're going to be focusing on accepting multiple modalities to help continue to develop our skills to becoming a Master PAL.
All right, so we always like to go through and break down what Master PAL means because we're really combining two different elements. One is we're becoming the master in these skills. So this is where you're becoming that skilled practitioner. You're getting really developing a lot of skills in a certain area. So like some synonyms, you're becoming an expert, you're becoming proficient in. So we're really going into depth into all of these different areas. When we meet, we talk, and we think about how we can apply these to our practice so that we become very proficient in becoming good communication partners.
But then the other side of that is the PAL part, the buddy, the comrade, the friend. And so while it's one part important to become skilled in what we're doing, it's also equally important for us to be a motivating partner and a pal to our students who use AAC so that they are motivated and they want to communicate to us.
So AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It's that umbrella term that encompasses all the different ways we communicate that supplements or replaces speech. So we can use gestures, we can use body language, we can use manual communication signs, we can use picture symbols, we can text and we can write, we can use emojis. It's all those other ways beyond speech that we communicate and communicate our thoughts and wants and needs.
And here we always love to keep this in here, the Communication Bill of Rights. If you haven't downloaded it, please download, print it off, print multiple copies, post it on your door. It's attached in the video links down below. But it's just a good reminder, something to kind of review at staff meetings and everything, or if you have like team meetings with your paraprofessionals and everything, and your teachers, it's something that is nice to review and bring to light.
Right, so if you're here with a specific student in mind and you're not sure if this student could benefit from these AAC supports and strategies that we are discussing, we like to think of one question to help us gauge that. Is that student's speech meeting their communication needs? And it's really a yes or no question. So if the answer is no, then yes, they could benefit from AAC. So that's why we're so excited to have the Master PAL training this year.
All right, so now we're gonna start our topic of accepting multiple modalities. And what this means is that we are going to validate and honor all communication attempts. And by doing that, we are teaching them that communication is power and that they have that power.
All right, so when we're looking at that accepting multiple modalities, validating communication attempts, teaching that communication is power, we like that there's a couple key concepts per the National Joint Committee. That's everyone uses a variety of means to communicate. So we use a variety of means to communicate. We gesture, we text, we send email, we use body language, we shrug, we shake our head, yes and no. Everyone uses a variety of ways to communicate. So it's just something that is innate and that we all do and should have access to. Also, another key concept is the best form or forms of communication for any individual person is that the individual will use it to communicate with other people. So what's best in a moment is whatever that individual is going to use to communicate and to express themselves with somebody else. So the best form could be a gesture. The best form of communication could be writing. The best form of communication could be using a manual communication board. It kind of depends on the environment and the moment and the person, but we're really looking at whatever ways that we use to communicate and express ourselves is the best thing that we can use in that moment.
All right, so think about the different ways that we may communicate. We communicate verbally throughout our day. I mean, think about all the people that you come into contact with, the situation that you've had in your day so far, and what you've had to communicate verbally. What have you had to or been able to communicate non-verbally? What have you been able to or had to communicate with technology? So like emails, text messages, Snapchat.
And then think through this. How do different communication modalities meet your different needs? So think back to when you communicate verbally, non-verbally with technology. Think how those different modalities meet your different needs.
So you've probably used a lot of, we're going to go back and review this. We've talked about this a couple times before, but you've used some unaided communication throughout your day. I know I do. I use gestures a lot whenever I'm talking. You can use your head and to say yes or no and respond or reject something. You will use your eye gaze. I don't know how many times I use my eye gaze with my kids and give them the look and they know that they need to settle down and stop what they are doing. Sign language. I use that all the time. Even it's kind of innate with some of my kids. Like we first started talking about like more stop. So like, especially if I want them to stop something and my hand comes out and signs the stop, they know mommy's had enough and it's time to stop. Facial expressions and body language that communicates so much. We may even be using words, but what we have going on with our face and our body at the same time is communicating that message even further and even more efficiently and effectively. The vocalizations that we have and our verbal approximations that our students may use, or even us, that also has communication power.
So while unaided communication is using just our body to communicate, aided communication means we're using something external from our body to communicate. And this can be a variety of different methods and modalities as well. So for us, it could be using pencil and paper. That would be aided communication to write a note to somebody. It could be using picture symbols. It could be using our phones to email or send emojis, or what is it, Jeanna? Snapchat? I don't do it. So I'm always like, what is, but using your phone to Snapchat. Looking at like AAC devices that we are familiar with, it could be using a high-tech speech generating device, could be using low-tech communication boards. And then there's lots of different ways to access those. For some people, it could be using scanning, where you hit a switch and it scans through your options and then you select it that way. It could be using a partner assisted scanning, where you have a communication partner help you go through those choices. So these are other ways that we communicate and that are also part of that valid form of communication.
Mm-hmm. All right, so successful communication strikes a balance of being effective, actually getting our message across, efficient with how fast and easily we're able to get it across, and then also socially appropriate. So within whatever situation it is, it was appropriate in the manner in which we communicated that with whatever modality that we used, if it was one of those unaided forms or if it was one of the aided forms. it was appropriate for the situation that it was in.
Then two modalities are used to achieve successful communication. They're going to vary though by our communication partner. So who we're talking to, we might choose a different modality. The communicative purpose, why are we wanting to communicate? That can have an effect on the modality we choose. And then the context of the interaction. So these are all the different areas that influence why or what modality we're going to choose that in that moment is going to be effective, efficient, and socially appropriate.
All right, so we've kind of talked about this before in other modules as well, but that we use communication on a daily basis for a variety of purposes. And we can use our core vocabulary words that we have for a variety of functions as well. I mean, if you think about even our babies, you know, whenever they're so many months old, or toddlers, they are learning to make requests, to protest, even to be able to comment, all non-verbally with unaided. I mean, they can smile and laugh, and we know that they're enjoying something. That's the form of commenting, showing us that they like it. They can request something by pointing to something, making, you know, vocalization. When something is near that they're wanting, they can protest by sliding it off their high chair or crying. And we know that's all them communicating different functions of communication, and they're learning that what those different functions of communication are and how what they're doing is communicating that and getting what they want by us, the communication partners, and how we respond to that. So it is imperative for us as communication partners, for anyone that we interact with, to be responding appropriately and accepting any kind of modality that they use, and then doing what we should, teaching them what we think that means and showing them what function of communication that could be. It's how we respond, the tone of voice that we use, the intonation that goes into our voice, our facial expression whenever we're responding, us expanding on whatever they used, whatever the modality, if it was a verbal approximation, if it was a vocalization, if it was them pointing, you know, taking that, but then adding more to it, expanding, adding words onto it, then pointing to a truck and going, oh, I see you pointing, and us pointing, going, saying, truck, you want the truck? And then giving them the truck and showing them that that was a request and that's okay. You can do it that way and we're going to give you what you want. So yeah, it is so important for us as communication partners, like I said, for us to be very aware and good with our observation skills and pay attention, accept any kind of modality that they use and apply meaning to it, because that's how they're going to learn what communication is, and that communication has power, and that they can have power and control over their environment and what happens around and to them.
All right, so taking that a step further, so let's get into the nitty gritty of it. So regardless of the child's modality, so they're communicating something unaided with their body. So maybe it's through body language, some of those examples that Jeanna shared. So pushing something, smiling, crying. It could be aided. So maybe they have a manual communication board that is available. It could be verbally. It's us as the communication partner. What we're going to do is, if we have a student that is benefiting from AAC supports and strategies, and we are working on supplying that support to them, we're going to accept that modality, but then we're going to demonstrate that message with the AAC system. So we're going to seize the opportunity of any communication attempt, whatever modality that is. And here are some of the steps we're going to use. We're going to repeat the child's response with a tone appropriate to the interaction. So are we affirming it? Is it a question, do we think? Then we're going to reframe the child's response to clarify the message or to enrich the interaction. We're going to extend the utterance with a more complete phrase, with more information or improved sentence structure. And then we're going to give a natural response or comment using a communication tool. So when you're going through and you're seeing these different areas, these are probably things that you are already doing. It just might be a slight tweak, or you might just having to add in one additional step. So it's something that we're probably comfortable with, but we want to break it down to make sure that we're getting in all these different areas so that we can really take hold of that opportunity to demonstrate that while that communication attempt is valid, it also can be shaped to be a communication attempt using a AAC system if needed.
Now, communication breakdowns are going to occur. We have communication breakdowns all the time. I have them on a daily basis.
Hourly.
Yeah. So they're going to occur. So just like know that, and know that it's a teaching opportunity. When a communication breakdown occurs, take that opportunity to teach them how to then repair it and different strategies that they could use to repair it. But never ignore it or set it to the side. You have to remember that you need to respect all of their communication attempts and whatever modality that may be during that process. But the purpose during communication breakdowns is for them to learn how to repair it and for us to show them the different strategies that they may use, whether it be maybe an unaided strategy, it may be an aided strategy. So if they had tried to communicate, you know, a request or something, and it had been with a verbal approximation and you're just not able to understand because of unintelligibility reasons, you know, showing them how to recognize when the communication partner is not understanding with whatever means that they were trying to communicate. And so knowing what to look for in their communication partner that shows them that they don't understand, and then what to do, that they can go find it on their AAC system. If they have an AAC system, they can spell or type it out by writing it. Other ways that they could do it, drawing a picture of it even. So showing them those different strategies to help repair that breakdown. But this will give them time and gain valuable practice with how to use that communication tool. Because like Maggie said, anytime that they communicate, we're accepting that modality. And anytime they have a breakdown, we're accepting that, but then we're teaching them, and it's our responsibility as a communication partner to show them how to do that effectively and efficiently on their AAC system. They may choose to use another way, and that's okay. But we also need to remember that we need to do it on their AAC system so that they know how to do it on there as well.
All right, so when we're going through all of this, we're accepting these multiple modalities in order to validate and to teach that power. We want to think through for ourselves. So we're developing this I am, and it's this attribute meaning. So when students with learning needs, complex communication needs, they can often become passive participants in their environment because of the way the environment was shaped by us as the communication partners. So we might be doing activities to the student, for the student, or around the student. Maybe we're not doing a really great job of including the student and giving the space for them to become an active participant within this learning environment. So we need to take a step back and to see how we are making sure that we are getting students involved here. So we need to provide feedback to teach that these communication attempts have meaning. So if you're smiling, if a student is smiling during the activity, we need to reference that, and we need to validate that, and then we need to demonstrate how that can be communicated in another way as well. So we are providing that feedback. The onus is on us as the communication partners to, like you said earlier, Jeanna, we have to be really observant. It can be easy to let these opportunities pass us by because we have to be watching, and we have to take that opportunity and grab it. So we really have to be paying attention and be vigilant observers. And we need to provide feedback to those communication attempts to show them that it has meaning and that it can influence the environment and it can influence the actions of others. This is one of the best ways that we can help our students get out of that passive role and into that active role, seeing that they can influence the environment around them and the action of others. So we're going to get into that a little bit more here.
So what Maggie was talking about and kind of alluding to and working up to is verbal referencing. And I think we've mentioned this before in some of our modules as well, but we're really going to dive into it and actually practice it too here on a couple of the slides. So verbal referencing is one where we're going to observe, like we've talked about, observe the student, observe their mannerisms, what they're doing, the situation around them. We're going to then actually label and tell the student what we're seeing about their body and what they're doing and describe it. We are then going to attribute meaning to what we think they mean by their body. And then we're going to expand it with an open-ended best guess. So for instance, if I observe, I come in and this, the student I want to work with is kind of slouched down in their chair and maybe over or sitting like with their head on the desk and their eyes are kind of fluttering back and forth between being open and closed. I'm going to see that and I'm going to say, man, I see that, you're kind of laying down and you can barely keep your eyes open. I think that means that you are tired. I'm going to attribute meaning then. And I'm going to, this whole time too, while I'm describing what I'm seeing and then attributing that meaning, I'm using their AAC system to do this, to show them where those words are. And then I'm going to expand it with, I wonder, or I think you're tired. I wonder if you would like to go take a nap, or if you're looking forward to going home and taking a nap. Or I wonder if maybe you're not feeling well. And again, I'm providing that aided language input and saying it all on their AAC system so that they know where these words are. So when that situation arises again, they're able to take that power and communicate it themselves. But then they also know by us telling them what we're seeing that we think this because of what we labeled and everything. So they know, they can understand what's going on with their body that's telling us these things and why we may be responding to them in a certain way. So now we're going to practice.
All right. Yeah, let's do some practicing. So we have a manual communication board here. So it could be similar to something you have, or maybe you have something totally different, but it's an example. So let's take an example of a student. We walk in and we see that the student is smiling while a lesson is going on. So we take out our manual communication board and we're going to do that. I see you smiling. I think that means you like it. And you can see those words are highlighted, you and like. So those are the words that we're focusing on, because smiling makes us think that we like something. So we want to show them where that word like is on their system. So again, if you had that board, you could practice. I think you like it.
All right, another one, we may see a student who's by the puzzles and reaching for a certain one. So we've observed this, we're going to label it and tell them what we see. You are reaching for the puzzle. Let's play, or we could say, since play isn't on this one, let's do it. So then we were expanding and taking that best guess part and providing that aided language input, like Maggie said, on whatever their AAC system is at that time. And as she said, if you want to bring out a board that you're using a lot with a certain student or student, and then practice these and with these different scenarios, please do that as well.
All right, so another one, you walk in and you see the student is pushing something off the table. So again, we're going to observe that and we're going to explain what we're seeing. I can see you pushing that off the tray. I think that means you don't like this. I wonder if you want to get something different. So again, it's those steps where we're observing, we are labeling what we're seeing, and then we are giving it we're attributing meaning to it, and then we're following up with like a wonder, our best guess about what that could mean for them. And so we're taking that communication attempt that they are expressing unaided with their body, and we are showing how they can also express that with an aided system, with a symbolic system, with their AAC system. But during this, the steps that we didn't do there, and we'll talk about this more too, is we're never asking that student to then tell us on this. We're not saying, okay, now you tell me here, you want something different. Tell me, say it, show me. That's not what this is about. This is accepting that modality. And then we're showing them that it has power, because we're going to accept that. But then we're also showing them how they can communicate in another way But again, as we've said before, you know, we have to do this over and over and over and over again. So that at some point in the future, then they know where those words are and could use it in context in that time. So this is one of those awesome strategies that you can use all of the time, anytime. And even though it's kind of quick, and like we said, it's probably with some of the steps you're already doing, you might just have to tweak it a little bit or add in another part to it. But it's pretty quick. And it's super powerful because we're doing all of these steps. We're validating that communication attempt and we're teaching them it has power. And then we are demonstrating it in a symbolic way.
I think like you just said, because I was going to say, all of you are probably now at the point where you're getting used to providing aided language input. And like Maggie said, you're probably doing some of this already. But this is just like, it's making it even better. So you're taking your aided language input that you're doing and providing, and you're making it even better by adding this verbal referencing piece, and improving, this teaching strategy that you're already implementing. So don't think of it as something new. I think sometimes whenever we think of something new, we're like, oh, I can't handle it. It's not something new. It's just, adding to what you're already doing and making it even better and more effective, and even more efficient. All right, so another example would be that, this is maybe at home with the mother and everything. So I heard I think you are trying to get my attention. And so I wonder if you want me to help. And so you would just point to the words want and help, and you're validating the fact that they said and what you think that communication function was, that it was to get your attention, and then words that they could use on their aided AAC system to communicate that even more effectively and efficiently.
So through this, one of the things that we're doing is we're kind of co-constructing messages together. So we're taking what the student is communicating, right? We're accepting that modality. They're communicating not with non-aided ways, with body language or with some verbalizations. So we're accepting that and then we're adding to it with them. So we're co-constructing a message and we're working together through this, and this creates a connection for us together, right? Because the student can see that we're observing them and that we are validating them, that we are listening to them and hearing them, however it is that we're communicating. And that creates a connection, right? Like we all want to be, feel that like we're being listened to and that we are being heard, however it is that we're communicating. So it's going to create a nice connection. Then it forms meaning, right? So we just went through these examples where these different body language things were we're communicating a message, and together we're forming the meaning from that. And that through that, we're creating an understanding so that your message that you're trying to communicate, I'm paying attention to, we're creating meaning together so that I'm understanding what you're trying to communicate. And again, that then cycles back to creating that connection. So it's a really powerful strategy, not only to develop those language and communication skills, but the overall reason why we communicate is to feel heard and like understood and to be connected to somebody else. And going into that, we just love this quote from Aaron Sheldon. The real measure of success is not how many words a kid can string together, right? Like we want that to happen, but that's not the real success from it. The measure of success is whether they feel understood. And this strategy of verbal referencing, so that we're accepting all these different modalities is really going to get to the heart of that, helping that student feel like they are understood. And that's going to help then create all these other opportunities to develop language and communication skills. So it's just a super powerful strategy. And like we said, it's quick. It's probably something that you're already doing. It might just practice it a little bit, tweak it just a little bit. I mean, this is always good when we go through it, Jeanna, because like I might forget some of those like I wonder statements, so it's always good to go through this because, you get going and you're in a routine of it, but it's always good to check yourself and make sure you're doing it as effectively and efficiently as you can. So I know as we were going through it, I'm like, ooh, I need to improve on my ability at the end of that, where I'm like, I wonder if. So just by tweaking it a little bit, you're really doing this really powerful communication partner strategy.
Great. All right, and now we're going to do some Mythbusters. sometimes we do have these myths and that come up, or just concerns that might come up as well from anybody who's, you know, unfamiliar with the AAC and how it works with our students and everything. One myth is that AAC hinders speech production. This one I know comes up a lot for me. And so I kind of have a set group of research articles and like little condensed paragraphs that I have on my go with me. But we're going to bust this myth. It does not. Every research study that's ever been done on the effects of AAC in correlation with speech production shows that it does not hinder their speech production at all. In fact, most of the time it's going to increase their speech production, or it's going to remain unchanged, but it does not decrease it. And also at the same time, it's going to be improving the receptive and the expressive language skills, literacy skills. All of that is going to increase. So even if we're maybe not seeing like any changes or increases in the speech production, their language and their literacy skills are benefiting from this, and their overall communication abilities are going to benefit from the addition of AAC. So our bottom line here to bust this myth is that AAC enhances an individual's ability to communicate effectively and independently, to not have somebody else talking for them. So, myth busted.
Busted. Taking that a step further too. So it's really helpful to think through and differentiate speech from language. So speech is here's the really academic definition for you. It's that acoustic signal shaped by the position of our articulators, right? It's achieved by that precise movement of oral structures paired with airflow. Speech is one way, and just one way, for us to communicate language. Earlier, we shared all those other ways that we communicate during our day. Speech is just one of the many ways that we can communicate and use language. Language and speech are different things, right? So we just said speech is the sounds coming out of our mouth. Language is the expression of meaning. It's achieved by arranging and rearranging words with intent. Language skills are expanded with increases in vocabulary and different morphological units. So here you see, Mama and I go to the store. That's language. I used speech to express that language, but down here it's in words. That's still language, right? So they are two separate things. And going to that myth that AAC will hinder speech, speech is just one of the ways that we can express language. We do not want to, a way to think of it is we do not want to keep language hostage to speech development. So if we're not seeing the speech develop, we want a way for that child to be able to increase their receptive and their expressive language skills. We want a way for them to be able to interact with language so they can develop their language skills. It's, you know, if they're using AAC and that enhances speech, that's great. But during that whole time, like Jeanna said, we're working on language skills, literacy skills, communication skills. And that's the power of AAC and why we say, like, start it now, do it now. We want a child to be able to interact with language so they can develop their language, literacy, and communication skills. So it's good to just separate those two things, because I think sometimes they get intermingled and we feel like, you know, you can't work on language if you're not using speech, but they're two separate things, and there's all these different ways to use language and interact with language that does not involve speech production.
Yeah, we definitely don't. They talked about in the previous slide about hindering speech. You don't want to hinder the development of language and literacy by, like Maggie said, keeping it hostage, not going ahead and implementing the AAC. There's nothing, it's not going to hurt anything at all. So just go ahead, take the plunge.
Take it, do it.
All right. And we often hear this too, but they can talk. So then, and Maggie kind of talks about this in the beginning when she asked that question. I forget what the question is.
Is their speech meeting their needs?
Yes. Is it meeting their needs? And so we also, when we think about that, is it meeting their needs? Is it snug? So is it spontaneous novel utterance generation? Is it unique to them and what that situation is for them? Or are they just giving you rote, rehearsed, memorized phrases that they know they can use in that situation? So this takes some, good observation and really reflect on what they are communicating. And again, that situation that's revolving around it and everything. But really is what they're communicating and what they are talking with, and the speech that's coming out of their mouths, is it really snug? So, and to go into that a little bit further and explain a little bit more. So is it spontaneous? Are those prompted utterances? Because if they are, they're not spontaneous. Again, they're not unique to that situation and that child and what they are actually thinking and what's in their head. They're just spewing out what they know you want. Novel. If it's an imitated utterance, it's not novel. It's not new and unique again. Expanded utterances, not single words, are more effectively capture the breadth of an interaction when meaning, intent, and or need for social engagement are present. And then generation, again, those rote utterances I kind of spoke about, like rehearsed. They memorize these utterances and when to use them during, some of our kids get really good at this, where they have just certain utterances that they have learned and phrases, and they know when to use them, but they're never changing them or varying them or anything like that. So if that's happening, then it's not generative. So really take some time and kind of, if you have a kid who you're like, oh, but they can talk, they don't need AAC, think about what their speech and the language that they are producing really looks like. And if it's prompted, imitated, if it's rote, then it's not snug. And so AAC would actually benefit them to give them that power of producing some unique language.
All right, so another myth that will come up, as well. So the myth is AAC is the last resort intervention, that it should only be used after we've done all of these other things to work on speech and early language development. And that is a myth, and we want to bust it. AAC is not a last resort. It's not something that should be at the end of the line in our thinking. And for all the reasons that we went through, that we want a way for students to be able to start interacting and learning language right away. We don't want to wait for them to get a way to have access to language, because without access to language, it's going to be hard to learn language. So we want to get a way for them to be able to do that right now. So research, again, the reviews of research, anecdotal evidence, clinical expertise, it shows that AAC plays many, many roles in early communication development. So AAC can augment existing natural speech. We see in research articles from above and that myth that it can, a lot of times it does help improve speech. So by getting AAC in the hands of a kiddo right now, not waiting, it can augment their natural speech and can help develop it. Possibly. It provides a primary output mode for communication. So right away, the student is learning how to communicate their thoughts and needs and wants. So we're not, again, we don't want to wait for them to have a way to communicate. We want them to be able to tell us what's going on or what they need right now. It provides input and output mode for language and communication. So again, they are going to have a way to interact with language so that they can improve receptive language and they can improve expressive language for the ultimate goal so that they can improve their communication skills. And it can serve as a language intervention strategy. So again, if we're not sure, like when a kid comes, we like to take a preschool classroom and just make AAC embedded in there, right? Like as a universal design for learning. Like AAC is a part of this classroom. We have our big boards up here. We have manual communication boards taped all over. We have apps on iPads. When you come into this classroom, it is just part of our day because it is going to help any student. It's visual. It's a way to make language visual, and we all benefit from visual. So it's going to benefit any of those students. Plus, it is also this really awesome way to work on literacy skills and emergent literacy acquisition. So it's going to benefit all of our students right when they come in. So it is not a last resort intervention. It needs to be thought of as like, you know, right now. It's like tier one. We have it in the classroom. You're coming in. We have it here available if you need it. And then for the students that do need it, then we know that we are supporting their language development right now. So again, that bottom line to bust this myth, AAC enhances an individual's ability to communicate effectively and again, independently, so that they are able to say what they want to say. They can achieve that snug, and they're not waiting on us to talk for them.
All right, so to recap, AAC again is that umbrella term, and it means lots of different things. All language is learned through that modeling. If it's, you know, our infants right from when they're born and developmentally growing up, we're providing that aided language input to them and modeling language and how it's used. Foreign languages, you know, if you're going to learn a new foreign language, it's going to be modeled for you. That's how you learn it. And AAC, of course. Modeling, again, or providing that aided language input means that you are speaking your words on their AAC system. And then another point is that we all require different modalities to communicate in different environments for different purposes with different communication partners. Throughout our day, we are verbally communicating to people, we are non-verbally communicating to them, and we are definitely in this day and age using technology to communicate. So all of us do it, and our modalities are accepted. So same for our students. We are going to honor and validate and accept any modality, whether it's unaided or aided, that they use, but then we're also going to teach them what type of function and communication that was and how to use it do it on their AAC system. Partners can use a child's tool to model their side of the interaction, even if the child uses a different modality. So again, just reinforcing, the child may have used an unaided form of communication, a gesture, to communicate a request. We're going to honor that. We're going to provide them with whatever they requested with, but we're also going to, at the same time, teach them by providing that aided language input on words that they could use on their AAC system to then also make that same request. But we do not require them to repeat it. We just show them how to do it.
All right, a couple places where to learn more. We love the AAC decisions. So we talked about for supporting SNUG, so spontaneous novel utterance generation. That's through ASHA, it's the American Speech Language Hearing Association. So that website's there. And then we love this blog post from AssistAware, the do's and don'ts of AAC, multimodal communication. So all of those different modalities. So that will go into a lot of those.
And thank you guys so much for joining us. And we look forward to discussing accepting multiple modalities more in depth with you in our follow-up discussion. Thanks again.
Thank you.